From Kewaskum to Germantown, Hartford to Newburgh, and everywhere in between, this is the History is Fun podcast. History is Fun is brought to you by the Washington County Historical Society, whose mission is to educate, preserve, interpret, and provide access to the history of Washington County, Wisconsin through our collections, archives, and programs. Visit us on the web at historyisfun.com. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Justin Agar Pratt, and I'm the Education and Public Programming Coordinator at the History Center. The purpose of this series is to continue to carry out our mission during these extraordinary and trying times. Each week, I will bring the history of Washington County to you, and it's my hope that this series will engage and educate you. New episodes will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and shared to our Facebook page on Mondays and Fridays. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when we upload new videos on Mondays and Fridays. We're also on Facebook, and you can find us at History Center, Washington County. Okay, let's move on to the main segment. In this episode, we're going to learn about Wisconsin's first industry, the French fur trade. Similar to the last episode, you'll get to see images of objects that you would normally get to handle during this presentation. If you see me give this presentation live, you'll notice that the virtual version is pared down quite a bit and doesn't include the fur trading game at the end. Some parts of these presentations just don't lend themselves to our new virtual reality. However, this will give you at least a Reader's Digest version of the French fur trade. Before we talk about Wisconsin's French fur trade, we need to set the stage. Wisconsin's first industry began amidst the backdrop of the Renaissance. Now, this involved upper and middle class people from Europe. It was a time of new ideas, new inventions, and new adventures, and began the age of exploration. It took place from the 1400s to the 1700s, and the reason this would lead people to the, quote, New World is that they were looking for resources. And while many European nations explored and exploited the Americas for its resources, the French made it to Wisconsin before anyone else did. So we'll focus on them and their impact on the area that would one day become Wisconsin for over 100 years. Now, you'll see on this map, you also can see where the Spanish, English, Dutch, and Swedish settled based on these arrows. In 1634, Nicolas arrived in Wisconsin, somewhere near present-day Green Bay. Nicolas was sent to explore the area by the governor of New France, Samuel de Champlain. He wrote about his travels around Lake Winnebago and throughout southeastern Wisconsin and his experiences with different indigenous populations. He met with Menominee, Ho-Chunk, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations that were living in Wisconsin. After Nicolas returned to New France, other explorers and missionaries were sent by the government to find out more about this new land. The French were primarily interested in Wisconsin and the region for commercial purposes and saw the indigenous groups as potential trading partners. Now let's talk about some other European explorers. Two of the very first known fur traders were Grossier and Radisson. They worked in eastern Wisconsin from 1654 to 1656, and then along Lake Superior from 1659 to 1660. The two most famous explorers were Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet. Marquette was a missionary and Joliet was a trader. Both were from New France, and they lived with different American Indian groups. They learned about a big river to the west from the local tribes. This river is what we now call the Mississippi. They found the Mississippi River in 1673 and drew a map of it and the surrounding area. And this made it easier for more people to come to the area and set up trade routes. Now, 2 slides before, I showed you a map of the United States and where the different European nations laid claim. This is kind of an updated map. This takes you up to 1763. This is an image of a beaver pelt, and it was the most sought-after pelt and a symbol of the fur trade. In Europe, beaver pelts were used to make fashionable hats, robes, coats, and capes. Now, beaver fur is waterproof because of natural oils, which made this a desirable fur for outdoor clothing. The beaver had been hunted almost to extinction in Europe, but was abundant in the Americas. To make the beaver pelt into felt, like seen on this top hat, the fabric or fur would be matted down and boiled repeatedly in water, resulting in a thickened felt. The felt was then flattened and steamed into the desired hat shape. This is an image of a toque, and it was the hat of the Voyages. Traders in Montreal, New France, hired Frenchmen called Voyages, and they traveled west from Montreal through the Great Lakes to Wisconsin, which is about a 2,500-mile journey. At trading posts and in villages, the Voyages exchanged European goods for pelts that the Native Americans had. Now, there were no well-known trading posts in Washington County, and that's because most trading posts were located near major waterways or rivers that led to other major waterways. And some major French trading posts in Wisconsin included Fort LeBay near Green Bay and Fort St. Nicolas near Prairie du Chien. These are some of the items of the Voyages. Now, they had to apply for trading licenses in the Great Lakes region, and once they were given permission, they could embark into the territory to begin trading. The Voyages spent most of their lives outdoors and in the wilderness, and though they were highly skilled and tuned to their environment, it was still challenging. Turned and sprained ankles, hernias, or hurt backs, chafed and blistered backs from portaging loads were common complaints. There were dangerous large wild predators like bobcats, wolves, and bears, and there were also thieves around. Voyages would carry a gun and powderhorn to protect themselves and their cargo, and you'll get to see a powderhorn later on in the presentation. They were able to tell time using an Aquitaine sundial, which is image number 1 on this slide. These sundials have been around since the 1100s. They cast a bead of light instead of a shadow to tell time. And to use it, you would rotate the brass ring so that the hole would line up with the current month. And then you would hang the sundial so that the hole would focus and face the sun. A stream of light would appear through the inner surface and indicate the time. In spring, both Native American and French traders joined at gathering spots throughout Wisconsin to watch the ice break. This meant Voyages could return to New France with their pelts, and it was a time for trading, but also for fun, learning, and language. Now, especially in Wisconsin, the French and Native Americans at first had relationships of mutual accommodation, so they were willing to help each other out. The Voyages would only eat 2 meals a day, breakfast and an evening meal, unless there was a hard portage that required another break and a meal. Now, I've used that word a couple of times. When a river was blocked or when they had to cross land to get to another river, voyagers would unload the goods and carry their boats across the obstruction. This is what's known as a portage. The canoe was carried across and then placed in the water and reloaded once they could continue on their journey. They ate off of pewter plates. You can see that is image number 2 on our slide. And they used horn spoons, which is item number 3. And they drank tea or coffee from tankards or fresh water from a wooden canteen. So image number 4, that little block, is actually tea. And they would transport it in those blocks rather than tea bags, and when you were ready for some, you would just break off a chunk and put it in your boiling water. The tankard is image number 5, and then the wooden canteen is image number 6. Rations usually included 1 quart of lied or parched corn, which is item number 7, or boiled peas. The meat they ate was usually fish, but sometimes they ate boiled pork. Bread was often just flour and water mixed and set in a pan before the fire, or if you were lucky, you could cook it in grease. They would also eat what they could find or catch, which included berries, eggs, honey, beaver's tail, turtle, and maple sugar. They would also eat pemmican, which is pressed buffalo meat, pounded fine, and then added to hot grease. Voyages traveled in birch bark canoes. Large ones measuring 40 feet long and 5 feet wide were used on large lakes, and small birch bark canoes measuring 24 feet long and 5 feet wide were used on rivers. For entertainment, they would sing songs and tell stories, legends, and myths. They would make and decorate baskets, paddles, and leather goods, and they would also play card games and arm wrestle. This slide contains images of some European items that would be brought for trade. Image number 1 is some silver jewelry. Image number 2, we have some glass beads. Image number 3 is a metal trap. And image number 4 is a metal knife, which kind of represents some of the tools that they may have brought to trade. So the French fur trade was Wisconsin's first industry, and it would later be replaced by lead mining in the early 19th century. The French influence gave us many French words for our cities and lakes, including Fond du Lac, Prairie du Chien, Eau Claire, Beloit, Lac La Belle, Marquette, and Alloway. Now, let's head over to the Curator's Corner. This is Julius Cratch's Powderhorn. Now, I mentioned during the presentation that the Powderhorn was one of the tools of the Voyages. And while this Powderhorn was not used by any Voyages that we know of, and does not date back to the days of the French fur trade, this will give you an idea of what fur traders would have carried with them. Julius Cratch's Powderhorn was donated to the History Center by his great-grandson. The sizable curved steer horn was likely used between 1840 and 1880 in Newburgh. Powderhorns were used to carry the gunpowder used during each load of a gun. Being waterproof, tapered into a funnel, and hollow, horns were natural receptacles for the powder. A cork or wooden stopper, missing in this artifact, would have plugged the narrow end and been removed before use. The metal bands around the horn added stability, as horns could get heavy when full and allowed the horn to be hung from a belt or pack. And now for our final segment, from the Research Center. Long before the current hipster beard trend, Washington County had its own group of bearded boys. For the 1954 centennial celebration of Boltonville, these men grew beards for the Bearded Men contest, the highlight of the centennial celebration according to the West Bend Pilot. A parade, a $500 fireworks display, and the crowning of a queen were also part of the centennial celebration. The winners for full beard were Earl Eisentraut, on the left end of the first row, John Brait, right end of the first row, John Ader, second row, third from the left, Wally Rodenkirk, third row, sixth from the left, and Wendy Weiss, fourth row, second from the left. If you're looking for a way to support the History Center, head to historiesfund.com and click on the Support tab. There you'll find all sorts of ways to support us, including donation and membership information. If you're already a member, thank you so much. Your membership makes what we do, including this podcast, possible. Remember, we'll post new episodes on Mondays and Fridays to our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. Be sure to catch our next episode as we move forward on our timeline of Washington County and Wisconsin history to learn about pioneer life, right here on History is Fun.